Hey, welcome back to the Secret Underground Lair. So we're back in the shop to finish off our red oak DemiLune table. And I was ready to do wet it down and give it a sand, and I realized again I forgot to do this little strip here. So there'll be a little decorative strip that runs around here. So I'm just going to cut that, get it set on, and then we can get on with the sanding and final finish. So I'll set up the camera, show you cutting that strip off on the saw, and we'll get that put in place. So that's the strip we want. Unfortunately, kind of as natural as it is, it doesn't have quite the flexibility that I want. I don't think. Might check it, but I'm thinking I might need to bend this a little bit using some heat. But I'll check it on the table first. If we can get this on without the need for heat bending, then we'll do that. On this center section, we're not going to have any trouble at all bending this around to fit. That'll go well. But on the end sections here, where we have these, it goes around this gentle curve and then makes that kind of hard left or hard right turn going around here. I will need to apply some heat on that. That's just going to be a little bit too much to bend. Too much for this. So I'm going to get a little heat unit set up. I'm going to cut this strip to roughly the size that I want. Fortunately, that one piece is going to be enough to do everything, so just going to cut out a section here out of the middle. All right, I got our three pieces here. One for the middle, one for this end, and one for that end. I just took a minute just to kind of sand and get that rough edge off, or the sharp edge off the top here, so that when you run your finger over here, you're not going to get a cut. So I'm going to go over and set this up now to make a little bend in here, and we'll make another sharp bend on this piece over on that end there. Okay, so I got my little bending jig set up. The torch blowing through it, so it's heating up. It has been heating up. And I'm just trying to saturate this piece, well, not saturate, but just get the wood a little wet. So I get a little bit of a steam effect as it's placed on the iron. And I can feel that giving already. Don't want to apply too much pressure. You can see that already has a good bend to it. And for the rest of the piece, I really don't have to do any bending, but I'm just going to give it a little bit of a gentle bend anyway, okay, since we're in the neighborhood. So you can see a bit of a gentle bend, and it makes a sharper turn down here. I'm going to go give that a test fit. Be right back. We're very, very close. I'm just going to give it a little bit more here and here. I've made a couple little marks. Give that another test fit. Little audio trouble here, but I continued bending the wood just to get that final fit. And now you can see how it got glued and clamped in place. A few clamps on there just to hold it in snug while the glue sets up. Then now I'm moving on to the left side where we have that hard left turn and getting this piece roughly measured. You can see I need to take a little bit off there. So I just cut that off with the bandsaw Now I'm left with a little final trim to cut off, and I did that using the benchtop sander. So I just butted the piece up against the belt and took a little bit off. You're going to see me fiddle a little bit with clamps. I'll start with just a little guy here. I want to make sure too that I'm flush on the bottom of the table. Shout out to John again for these clamps. These little Johnny clamps are really nice. Perfect for this kind of work. Got a wee problem. That didn't sit in quite right. Seems like the whole piece is shifted that way just a tad. See if I can get it to move back at all. Might need a little persuasion here. Okay, just had to give it a little bit of a tap to get that corner in. And put the clamps back on, we're good. I'm just trying to wipe up some of that extra glue. Neat things about wetting the wood is you get to see what the grain could look like. What do you think of that? That's not too bad, is it? That could look pretty nice. Okay, we'll do the final piece on the other side. Actually, there's 2 little bits to put in here too, so we'll get to those in a minute, but I'll do the other section first. So our little edge strips are all set. You can see a little bit of water left over where I've kind of wet the surfaces. The legs are still a little wet. The top I did it earlier, and you can really feel the roughness, how the water raised the grain here. And I've just gone over this part here with 180. Again, it takes it down smooth as glass. So I'll just finish doing this sanding, and then we'll pick a stain color. And that's our table, fully sanded, ready for stain. So the wetting the wood just raises the grain a little bit, but doesn't take very much to knock it off. So just a little quick sand with 180, and man, that came off right away. So, lunch, a haircut, then pick a stain. So I did some sample stain on some offcuts from our little DemiLune table. And what I've got here is provincial stain. This one is an Coffee, espresso, right. So, provincial, espresso, chestnut, and weathered oak. And it's kind of difficult to pick up on them all, but what I have observed about the first three is that they really do accent the grain, make it much darker, where the weathered oak tends to lighten the grain compared to the other ones anyway. Kind of evens it all out. So I'm going to go with the weathered oak. And we'll get the table up here and start applying the stain. Okay, you got the table set up. I'm going to do the bottom portion first, and then I'll flip it over and do the top. John supplied me with a new set of gloves, or a box of gloves, so I'm using these instead of the other ones I was using. Thanks, John. And yeah, I'm going to apply the stain using a foam brush and then spread it around a little bit, rub it in with a rag there. Okay, that is stain applied everywhere. I'll begin rubbing it off. Let's see what we got. All right, I like the look of that. Doing well. I just want to make a comment too about the plugs that I put in there. I had a discussion with Aldun about this. You know, when I put the plugs in, you may have noticed that there's a black ring around every plug. I'm just going to bring you over so you can see that. So you can see that every plug has this black ring around it. And thinking back on what happened, when I was cutting those plugs, I was pushing a little bit hard on the drill press, and I was actually burning the edge of the plug. So when it came out of the cutter, it was charred pretty heavily. And it's actually, I didn't think it would have any effect. I didn't think that would last through the press fit into the lumber, into the board here. But clearly it did. So kind of lesson learned. Go easy when you're cutting the plugs. Don't let the wood burn, and if it does burn, then sand it off so you get rid of that char mark, because it leaves that beautiful little ring. Now I might remember that though if I want to make like a board, a game board of some sort, and I want to have little rings around it. Maybe that would be a neat little effect. But for furniture, oops, lesson learned. All right, and there's the top sanded. I had to bring this down onto the floor to do it, so that's why I didn't do that on camera, but I think that came out okay. So I'm going to go get our little three-legged DemiLune table that was in the paint shop. It's been primed. I have a little bit of work to do on that one, and then I'm going to sand it down for a final coat. So I'll bring that up, and we'll go over what needs to be done there. So here's our little three-legged DemiLune back from the paint shop after getting some primer. It needs to be sanded now with some 220. But I just wanted to point out this little gap that we've got here. As the piece settled, this little gap opened up. Now I had been toying with the notion of using another one of these little clamps right about here to tie that into the top, but I think it's not going to close the gap entirely. And I do worry a little bit about cracking some wood if I really crank down hard on it. So instead, what I'm going to do is just use, after I get this sanded, I'm going to put some acrylic caulk in here just to seal that up. And you won't even know it's there once the piece has been painted. So on with some 220 grit sanding, put a little bit of caulk in there, and then we're back to the paint shop for a final coat. Just a quick note too about the sanding. I'm on the top surface here, I'm using a 220 with a block just to get rid of some high brush marks that might have been left behind or the odd drip. But because this piece is not perfectly flat, as you know, by design, there's a little bit of waviness to it. You can feel that when you rub your hand over it. I'm going to do the remaining sanding just freehand with just my fingers. But again, this is not a heavy sanding. This is just removing some brush strokes. It doesn't take very much at all on this pass. That's all I'm going to do. Now I'll do the rest of the surfaces, of course, but just kind of that lightly. So I'll come back when that's done. The table has been completely sanded down with 220, ready for second coat, and you can see we closed off that crack. You'll never see that. So just a neat little trick with some acrylic latex caulking. So anyway, back to the paint shop. So the next time you see our tables, they will be fully painted and 2 coats of urethane. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.